Is there a ballpark number you could put on like close fucking friends of yours that you've lost?
16.
16?
Yeah, I know that because when I was a mess in my transition from active duty to being a civilian, I was all fucked up. But I dudes that I knew, you know, I mean, it's not like dudes that I just kind of fucking had passing by, but in total 16 dudes. I etched all their names on a fucking bracelet one day in San Antonio, Texas, on a leather bracelet that had to be fucking 3 inches wide to fit their names on it. Going through all the names of the dudes that I've lost that I knew, 16 fucking dudes, man.
So tell me, if you would, about kind of the impact that's had on you. I'm always curious to get fellow veterans that have had, close personal friends be lost, way before when they were anticipating, and the impact that has.
I don't. What's odd is, for me, it hasn't had that negative of an impact, in the sense that I know what they died doing and serving. And so I knew the stakes, and so did they. So when I think about that loss, I feel sorry for their families. I feel sorry for their friends. But for me, it kind of keeps me in the fight, keeps my headspace proper. Because when I'm feeling sorry for myself, or when I'm fucked up, when I'm just being a shitbag, I think about what they would say to me if the opportunity for them to live was available. And they would say, shut the fuck up, stop being a pussy, and live your life. Yeah. I mean, I hate guys seeing themselves, and this isn't just for guys, it's for anybody, but people who experience trauma and they continue to look inside themselves and somehow source a solution that's not there, instead of kind of introspectively looking at the circumstance and realizing that death is a part of life, and how you die, how you're taking out of this world is just as important as the life that you live. Yeah. And so for them to volunteer to be in a position to put their lives on the line, none of those guys would take it back, because they were doing what they loved. And so that gives me motivation to just stay in the fucking fight and live, because they couldn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, it's really refreshing to hear that. I share a very similar sentiment. I kind of try to reduce it to, if the tables were turned, and I'm not a religious guy, but let's just say I have an ability to, on the other side, observe, Glenn, feeling sorry for himself and contemplating suicide, or, using the bottom of a fucking Jack Daniels bottle to whatever. Like, I would want to reach through the spirit world and slap the shit out of him and be like, hey, fuckface.
100%.
Like, I'm not here. You are. Like, stop pissing away the opportunity. Yep. and fucking take advantage of the fact that you're still here, and to me, like, I don't think there's a better way to honor anybody who's been lost for any reason than to do exactly that. Like,
absolutely.
Take advantage of it. So I wish that message was a little more prevalent, because I do agree. I hate to see, some veterans that struggle with it, that don't look at it. I'm not going to say they use it as a crutch or an excuse, but it's just that, they have an impact that's burdening them from, being productive and living as good a life as they can possibly lead. But so that's great to hear you say that. As that time in your career wrapped up, what was all right, fuck this, I'm getting out? Because at 18 years, that's pretty rare.
Yeah.
My last guest got out at 16 and a half, being disgruntled. Was that?
Yeah, a lot of it had to do with Libya. Yeah. I mean, in Libya, look, I didn't develop the target packet. A unit developed the target packet. Special Operations Command did, and we had all of the options. My option, for me specifically, was the bilat option, which is bilateral operations, meaning using a Libyan face to kill or capture the bad guys responsible, and we're there facilitating it. We had a unilateral option, and we even had a kinetic option. So we had all the options to bear, and we dropped it in front of the chief of mission, who is the ambassador at this time. It was a chargé, Alexander Pope, and I'll call that fucker out at any time of the day.
Where was he from?
So I don't even know. He was, after Stevens was killed, who was loved in that country, they appointed him as the temporary chargé, which was a short period of time, but he was there as the chargé, and basically said, hey, the political climate won't allow us to do anything about this. And we're like, I remember specifically a very, very good dude from the organization, from a special missions unit, standing up and saying, so you're telling me your fucking ambassador was just killed. 4 Americans were just lost. We have the path to kill or capture them, and you're not willing to fucking do it? And he was irate, like he should have been. When that happened, it was a constant struggle. And then the last straw for me was partly I was getting recruited for the agency. At that time, I had finished my college degree, so I had a opportunity to do something else. Also, on active duty, I didn't want to be a sergeant major because I didn't want to do fucking staff. Typically that's a route for us. And I will tell you, at the higher echelons of Special Forces Command, specifically sergeant majors, I don't know what the fuck happened to them. They lost their ball sack along the way, but they get shit on by officers, and they don't have any command and control opportunities within the organizations that they run. And I was like, oh, I don't want to be a sergeant major. I became a sergeant major later in 19th Group under different circumstances. But Algeria, the Marlboro man, who was infamously, can I say that out loud? Infamously known as, because he was a head of a terrorist organization that was bartering for cigarettes in the Trans-Sahel area, which was the area that we were operating in. He took an oil refiner hostage in Algeria. And this, what I'm saying isn't classified because it's open source. My guys and a joint task force were prepared to conduct a hostage rescue because we had Texans there, Americans that were there. We loaded out our fucking Toyotas, our Land Cruisers. We were prepared. My guys were dressed like we were ready to go conduct an operation. They wouldn't allow us to do it. A joint task force shut us down.
So what the fuck happened with these guys?
They got killed.
No shit.
The Texans got killed. It made like a fucking 30-second plug on 60 Minutes, and a couple news stories picked it up. But that's it.
Do you know what company they were with?
I don't. It was a significant oil company, and southeast Algeria on the border of Libya. I mean, we were 30 kilometers away. We had planned multiple courses of action to do it.
So was it Pope that shut that down?
No, it was actually, I believe, Special Operations Command Africa. And this is what infuriated me at the time is I'm a team sergeant. My job is operating as the representative for the crisis response in the continent of Africa, as the team lead for the Commanders in Extremist Force. The dude that I was working for, who was a Wells Fargo employee, didn't even know what the fuck the SIF was. He didn't even know what crisis contingency was. I picked up the phone and I called SOCAF, Special Operations Command Africa.
I thought it was sock as fuck.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it is. So I pick up the phone and I call, and their staff duty answers. I said, hey, what the fuck? Let me talk to somebody from J3. And he's like, who is this? I was like, it's the team lead for fucking Libya. Let me talk to somebody at J3. Oh, Sergeant, there's nobody from J3 here. I was like, it's 10 o'clock at night and there's a fucking hostage. Like I just heard it through the BBC. What the fuck are you talking about? Oh, nobody's here at night. Like, what? This is an active combatant command for special operations, and there's no fucking body monitoring it. Now, supposedly it's changed since then, but what are you talking about? Like, let me talk to somebody in S2, J3, J2. There's nobody but a fucking dude, playing PlayStation on staff duty. So I went to the command, went to JSOC. I was like, we got to fucking spin something up. So we started planning. We started working on the crisis contingency like good special operations guys. And long story short, nothing happened. We decided not to do anything about it. Algeria launched a botched hostage rescue, killed a whole bunch of hostages, including Americans. When I came back, I basically told my chain of command to go fuck themselves. I reported this lieutenant colonel because he was getting drunk while my guys were out operating and training in the middle of the night. Nothing was done about it. The political climate wouldn't allow for pieces of shit to be taken off the battlefield who were shitbags and compromising my security, my men's security. I didn't even have I came back and got put in for a meritorious service medal, which is just kind of standard operating procedure for a E8 who spent his whole life in the military. They downgraded my award to a fucking ARCOM, Army Commendation. I got an Army Commendation once for getting a 300 on a PT test, a physical training test. I put one of my 18 Deltas, who was a staff sergeant who was deployed with me, in for an award for going to Benghazi for an operation, and he got an ARCOM, an Army Commendation Award. So, you know, I love the regiment, but fuck that chain of command. Fuck that company commander who is one of the biggest piece of shits I've ever worked with. And I don't say that lightly, because I want to support ground fighters and ground force commanders who are doing their fucking job. But all the way up the chain, I could write a fucking, you know, a 10 series Netflix special on fucking a documentary on how fucked up the process was. So I decided to get out and work for the agency instead.
And then realized they're as fucked up.
They're just as fucked up. And that's what I realized.
Same whore, different dress.
And I stopped chasing the rainbow at some point.
Yeah.
Man.
What was the time period from when you guys were made aware that hostage situation with the oil workers, like when you found out about it versus when they were killed and it was denied? Was that like a
few
couple
days? Yeah,
so
a few days.
Several days of them.
Yeah.
Man,
a few agonizing days. It's the first
criminal.
It's the first time in my military career that I had a breakdown in military composure.
Yeah.
Where I went in on this lieutenant colonel in the skiff, which is just a special compartmentalized secret kind of room, and flipped the table and fucking went off on him. And
broke his PlayStation.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, the dude was probably drunk when I was yelling at him. That's why he didn't kick me off the continent. But
did you fuck him up?
I didn't, but I made threats, and I said, listen, man, I don't know what the fuck you're doing here. I don't know what we're doing here, but you need to pull your head out of your ass. And I was trying to be tactful, and then I just fucking lost it. And one of the team leads, a good dude by the name of Craig, who was my team leader on my detachment. I was the operations NCO, the team sergeant, kind of like put his hand on my shoulder and said, calm down, Mike, it's okay. And I walked out, and my guys were downstairs watching TV, and they looked at me like I just beat mommy. And from there, I let Craig take over, and I ripped out 3 weeks later. 2 weeks later, after hitting the ground at Carson, I was out in the military. I dropped paperwork. They said, are you dropping paperwork? And I was like, I'm fucking out. Fuck you guys. Like, I dropped it. People didn't even know that I was dropping paperwork. And before you knew it, before my company even came back from Germany, where we were pre-staged, I was already out of the Army.
How did that impact the unit that you stood up then? I mean, was that a kind of a backfill struggle for them, or were they able to kind of recuperate with?
So I was already on a typical master sergeant in SF is restricted to how much team time they had, meaning I only could have 2 years, a maximum of 2 years of Special Forces team sergeant time.
So you were they were already planning on your departure.
I had already done 2 years.
Yeah.
I was over 2 years. So if they told me you could be a team sergeant for the rest of your career, I would have never left that team.
Yeah.
So my time was already up. They had already planned to have a backfill to put in the position for team sergeant. And, just like we all think we're entitled and too significant, we're a fucking cog in the wheel, man. We're a spoke on the fucking wheel.
Fucking pawn on the chessboard for sure.
That's it, man. Yeah, that's it, man.
Maybe you're the felt underneath the pawn.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. All right. So relatively abruptly, you find yourself a fucking jackass civilian.
Yeah.
So, being in that position that, for your entire adult life, you've never really found yourself in. Talk about that experience of how fish out of water you felt or not. And kind of what that was like, finding yourself being like, holy fuck, now what?
Yeah, people forget, one thing in association with PTSD is a career in special operation is all traumatic. I mean, everything you do in special operations, from training to the downtime, which there is none, to the experiences you face at war, that entire experience is, like I said, a dog at war. So when you come home from that and you're expected to be a house pet, it really doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. And
so I got out and transitioned straight into the National Guard, which is the reserve component of Special Forces in 19th and 20th Special Forces Group. And that was cool because I had a team on active duty. I stood up a team in the National Guard, but it was 1 week in a month. I mean, that wasn't something that was earth-shattering when it came to transitions for me. It didn't make it easier. So I had a tough time, man. I fucking was falling apart, man. Relationships, I burned the relationships. I was isolating myself, thinking that was a proper answer. I'm not even a drinker, and I was drinking, just trying to drown away just shit I didn't want to think about. And so it was painful. Luckily, I got a job with the agency, which helped a lot because I remember the time where I got vetted with the agency and they said, hey, you're going to now deploy. I was super pumped. I'm like, thank God I'm getting back on the road. And there wasn't a big lull. I mean, we're talking about 6 to 8 months of a lull, but in that 6 months with terminal leave, dude, it was like being in purgatory.
Were you ever married on active duty?
I was.
Yeah.
I completely fucked that up, man.
Any kids?
None. No.
Well, at least there's that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, that being one of the casualties of the job and, in that 6 to 8 month purgatory time, was there any soul searching? Did you go on any trips? Were there any elements where, that you kind of had an epiphany or you like slapped yourself, or was it just getting that job with the agency of now having something else to focus on that really kind of pulled you out of it?
So I definitely had an epiphany. I mean, one of the instances that I often discuss is just hitting rock bottom. I mean, rock bottom for me was literally bottom of my kitchen floor. I had a house in Colorado. I had a wife. I had everything going for me. I had everything. And I pissed it all away. And, after talking to counselors and psychologists and everything else, what we often do is similar to what we experience in war, where we think what we have in structure needs to be burned down to the ground for some reason. Sabotage or, burning bridges and burning shit to the ground is part of our MO. And so at rock bottom, I had to get off my ass and do something. I wasn't, I went from working out every day, being a leader at the tip of the spear, being in special operations, which clearly defined me, to not having an identity. I didn't know who the fuck I was. So I went to hot yoga, which is crazy.
Mostly to stare at chicks' asses in the back of the room.
Mostly to stare at chicks' asses, which was cool in San Antonio, Texas. I did that. And it was a pretty cool experience. 90 minutes of suffering made me feel at home. And it sucked. I was going through a gallon of water a period. If you're a 120-pound female, hot yoga is not that difficult. But if you're a 240-pound dude, it's fucking hard.
Yeah, that's inflexible as fuck.
That's inflexible. She can't even touch my toes. Yeah. And so that experience helped me get back on the right path, getting back into the gym, more physically fit, and finding the old routines that I didn't have. I always think it's funny when operators or special forces guys come out and they're like, we're unconventional or we're irregular because you do irregular warfare. Like, no, you're not, man.
Yeah, you're regimented as fuck.
You're regimented as fuck. You're doctrine. Yeah. You're literally the walking definition of doctrine because your limit of advance, your left and right limits, your backstops. You live life off of a timetable that is clearly annotated on a whiteboard. Yeah. And when all that goes away and you have to do it on your own, it's fucking hard, man.
Yeah. I know there's a fair bit that you can't share about your time with the agency. Of what you can, what did you take away from that experience? What was that like?
Man, I didn't know what to expect, because I was one of those guys who hated contractors when I was in the GWAT. If I was sitting down, after an op where we lost a guy or we had a big gunfight in a chow hall and I saw a dude who was making 5 times more than I was making and we were in the middle of the war fighting and he's getting this fat paycheck, I thought, man, how selfish of you,
working half the year.
Working half the year.
Yeah.
How selfish of you. And then I found myself there because I had exhausted war. The only reason I didn't stay in the military is because there wasn't really shit going on.
Yeah.
And every single time I fought to be in it, I was getting denied. And so I was like, you know what? Fuck this. This is not working out. I'm tired of chasing the rainbow with DOD. Even at the tip of the spear with an SMU, you still belong in the Army, the bottom line. And so I thought, somehow, some way, there's just an organization out there that allowed you the latitude to operate. And that organization for me was the CIA. I had read about Mike Spann as a paramilitary operations officer as the first casualty after 9/11 in Afghanistan. And I was intimately familiar with paramilitary operations, with ground branch, and that's what I wanted to do. In fact, my entire special operations career was a stepping stone to get to that. So I got recruited, and I started going through the process. And then at the end of that process, the sequester happened, which is that big stop loss on, essentially on all hiring and budgets and everything else. And so it put me in this lull period. Well, in that lull, thank God for the independent contractor realm. They picked me up and allowed me to do security contracting overseas to protect people in austere and shitty environments. So I did that for a little while. And what I realized was it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. I mean, I showed up to vet with the best dudes who were from tier 1 units that had operated at the tip of the spear and retired out of there as CSMs, Command Sergeant Majors, from every branch of service. And the minimum for my specific job as an independent contractor versus an industrial who works for a company, like, there's 100 companies out there that are security contract companies. Blackwater used to be the popular back in the day, or the unpopular or infamous now. But I was an independent. I had to have 6 years of soft time. So when I showed up, dudes were there to go to work. And the vetting process was a lot more difficult than I thought. In fact, I started, I think March 14th, we started a contractor development course, CDC, where we're training people to prepare for that, because I have guys that still work for the organization. They're having a hard time getting dudes, because my generation of GWAT dudes, when I assessed in 2013 and 14, had a lot of experience. There's dudes now getting out who they barely got a rotation. They might have one to Afghanistan, and they can't shoot like we used to shoot. And so they're hard pressed to retain dudes or get dudes that are capable of shooting at that level. Yeah. It's the hardest vetting process I've ever been through as far as shooting, including the most elite counterterrorism unit in the world.
I think that would surprise a lot of people.
Yeah.